Welcome back, you all. Welcome back, you all. It is time to remap your mind so we can create a life we design. And I am super excited because I have a colleague of mine. I see a new friend. I love this doc. We have been in the same circles for years, and I've been watching and following her, and I just think she's amazing, Dr. Jennifer Caudle. Thank you so much for coming on today. How are
It,
you?
well, I am better now after that lovely introduction. That's so sweet of you. And the feeling is mutual. You know, we've seen each other's names, and I've seen your work and all that you're doing. And it's actually really nice to meet you. I feel like we're having a cup of coffee or something, like a long overdue cup
Yes.
of coffee. So I thank you for inviting me out for coffee.
Thank you for coming. Yeah, no, this is like, the virtual tea coffee thing that I love to do.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love to see you on in these media outlets, just giving your expertise as a Black female physician. It's so
Yeah.
important that our young people see, people like you being able to be out there and the contribution that you are to not only our industry as doctors, because we're like the 1%,
Right.
right? But also that the creativity, that there's something outside of the box, that if you want to go on to medicine, you don't just have to be a clinician. Not to diminish that, I'm a family doc like you're a family doc, but also that there are so many pathways. And so I'd love for you to
Mhm.
tell your story. Like, how did you go from being clinician to
Yeah.
being an influencer in the media?
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I would actually also, say that you are an influencer in the media as well. I mean, look, you have a podcast. You are a perfect example of actually what you're asking me about. You're doing yourself, which is wonderful. And this is
Thank you.
what I love to see, is that there's so many more people getting involved in whether it's communications or media, or it doesn't even have to be that. It's just, as a doctor, there are sometimes the options are not always obvious, but
Right.
there can be a number of options. So, my story very briefly is, I had been in, and I don't know if a lot of people know this or not, but to help pay for college, I was an undergraduate at Princeton. To help pay for college, I learned about the Miss America system. Now, yes, and it was a detour in my life because I was always a very serious student, and I was not the pageant type. It was way before I got my weave. Okay, let's just keeping it real. No, I talk
Yes,
about this very
ma'am.
frankly because I think it's important that people understand. I was the girl who was very much a nerd. Very much, not the popular girl. I didn't have a boyfriend until I was 20, 21 or 22.
Mhm.
So I say all this to paint a picture, right?
Mhm.
That at the time that I heard about pageants, I was 20 years old. And it was when the woman brought it up to me, because I play a musical instrument, I thought she was nuts. I was like, are you kidding me? And I also thought pageants were kind of frivolous. And I thought I had all these sort of stereotypical visions of what pageants were. And I also thought pageants weren't for people like me, that is,
Mhm.
Black women.
Mhm.
I had short hair. I was I was overweight based on pageant standards, all of
Mhm.
these things, right?
Yeah.
So I say that to paint a picture, not that it was like, oh, of course she did pageant. No, 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 no. All this came out. I learned how to do my makeup. I learned. I got to weave later, okay? Because it's important to be very true to who I was. I did pageants to earn money. I was working 4 jobs off and on at Princeton, I was delivering newspapers at one time. I was working in the music department, doing all this stuff. So Miss America at the time was the world's largest scholarship organization.
Mhm.
So that helped me pay for college. It actually gave me some money for med school later on. It was an amazing opportunity that I became Miss Iowa 4 pageants later. My journey, 4 pageants later, I ended up at the Miss America stage as Miss Iowa. And I wasn't actually the first Black woman to be Miss Iowa, believe it or not. The first
Wow.
Black woman to ever compete on the Miss America stage came from Iowa in 1970. Believe it, who would have thunk
In
it?
Iowa, of all states.
Of all states. But I always tell people, I say, don't sleep on Iowa now, because I know people, don't sleep on Iowa. We got some things
Really?
going, but the long and the short of it was, the reason for me telling you all this in answering the question of how did I get involved in media was, I did not win the title of Miss America, not even close, but when I came back to my home state of Iowa, I spent the year traveling as Miss Iowa, speaking, communicating, lecturing, talking, performing. And that's when I really, really solidified my love of communications and education and interaction. I fell in love with it. Now,
Mm,
medicine, I graduated from college in medicine. I was pre-med, and I was always going to go to med school, but I had a little bug in me that was planted from this unexpected experience.
mhm.
So that's why the story is that part of the story is important to my media
Yeah.
story, because it's what showed me and told me, hey, maybe you'd like to figure out a way where you can use your medicine in a way, or communicate medicine outside of the office,
Mhm,
outside of the exam room. So fast forward, then when I was in med school, it was always sort of in the back of my mind, how
mhm,
do I use my communication, my love for communication, how do I mix that with this?
mhm.
So I'll be very brief, because sometimes I get long-winded and I get a little
It's
verbose.
okay. It's
But
okay.
so the specific thing of how media came, I was always fascinated with television doctors. Now back then, I mean, I've been attending maybe for 13 or so years. This was like early 2000s. This was before Instagram. It was before
Mhm,
YouTube might have been around, but certainly YouTube stars and this. It was not that. Right. And there were maybe only a couple of doctors on television with the main network stations. And that was really kind of it. And in local markets, what I noticed in Philadelphia was that reporters, health reporters, et cetera, did the health news. I was always
mhm.
curious, how do stations pick the studies they talk about? How do they choose how to talk about them?
Right.
And I was literally on rotation as a third year. See, I was a third year medical student,
Mhm,
and I was on service in the hospital. I think I was on
mhm,
infectious disease or something like that. And
mhm,
we were waiting for our attending to come to round, because she rounded later in the afternoon. So we had some
mhm,
downtime.
mhm,
And my resident on service started talking about her experiences. And she'd gone to Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, which is across the bridge.
mm.
I'm a DO, and I went to what was then UMD&J, School of Osteopathic Medicine. And
Oh,
she had said that the local TV station, Channel 6, would take students from Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine to do media rotations for 1 month at a time. And I said, what? I was
okay.
like, come again? Wait, excuse me?
Right.
It's funny how serendipity happens, right? And
Mhm,
literally, I was like, what? And all it took was hearing that story for me to literally go home that
mhm.
evening. And I picked up the phone and I cold called Channel 6 ABC News in Philadelphia saying, hey, I heard med students can do rotations. I didn't even get permission from my from my school yet. I somehow figured out a way to do a rotation. I got the permission. And anyway, point being is, that's where my experiences started, and how I was actually able to start manifesting what I'd been hoping to do in some sort of way from years prior. So that's the beginning of it.
I love it. Here's what I love about what you said. So, number one, you hustle. I mean, like I heard up
Yeah.
in there 4 jobs.
Yeah.
You
Oh
sound a
yeah.
lot like me, right? Like I had the most unique jobs in college, right?
Hmm.
And then you did what a lot of people are unwilling to do, which is cold call,
Yeah.
you know? And I think it's so important because that being, when you don't see an opportunity that's made for you, and a lot of times we don't do this, we just kind of say, well, it's not possible, you know. But
No.
but what you did was like, okay, well, it's not here, but I'm going to create it. And I think that's what opens up pathways, is really keep holding the vision. And they always talk about trying to get a seat at the table, but no, just set up your own table.
Right.
Just set up your
Right.
own table outside the door and be like you said, knock on the door
Hey.
and get those
Hey.
doors open, right? And that persistence and that consistency is the key. So I wonder, how, as a Black female, how people responded, like how was it, what that
Hmm.
experience of, because this is, we're in a very
Hmm.
paternalistic society, and there's
Absolutely.
only one right way. And so I'd love to hear sort of like what are some of the challenges that you went through.
You know, um, so being a Black woman being a person of color, period, in this country
Yeah.
comes with episodes and instances of racism and bias. It just does. It's and not that I'm trying to put a blanket sort of judgment on how this experience goes for every person of color. I can't and shouldn't do that, but it's hard for me to believe that being a person of color that we all have not experienced some sort of that. My
Mhm.
experiences are no different. I mean, I certainly in media have absolutely come across people who have not treated me right. And I think that's the best way to put it. When you're not treated right. You
Mhm.
know when something's not right.
Yeah.
You know when you're not treated right. And I think that's that kind of look, when people aren't doing you right.
Right.
And I've absolutely had those experiences in media. I've had those experiences in medicine, just as I imagine, unfortunately, you probably have too, just
Mhm.
because you're
Mhm.
a Black woman, right?
Mhm.
These experiences happen. They still continue to happen.
Mhm.
Um, you know, my my thing about it is, and I guess growing up in Iowa, a lot of people are like, there are Black people in Iowa. And by the way, there are some Black people in Iowa. My family of four, and no, um, but that's the first thing people ask, and I don't blame them, because most people don't even meet people from Iowa, period, whether of color or not, because I always say, people in Iowa, we often sort of stay there. It's not often you meet somebody from Iowa and then to be Black, but no, I had a wonderful upbringing and in the state of Iowa. But did I experience racism there and other places? Absolutely. I'm not going to say it's just something that we deal with and you get over it. That's not what that's not what I mean. But it's something that, as a Black family, my parents are from the South. They we had the dinner table talks, and the talks about, okay, well, no, don't ever forget you're Black, and what Black being Black means. We had these conversations and lived these experiences, and my family and my parents were very, 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 we were very aware. Okay, so as many Black families do, we have those talks. You talk to your children about what it means to be Black. So I'm not going to say it's what it was, but I was never surprised.
Right.
I hate to say it, even still, yeah,
Right.
I'm always aware. Every time I leave my apartment and walk in there, I
Mhm.
recognize I'm a Black woman. And just as perhaps with you, there's no day that I don't recognize that this is what it is. In fact, it makes me and the work that I do even that much more important.
Mhm.
There's COVID has been the tragedy of our generation, right? But there have
Absolutely.
been some good things coming out of it. One of them on the media front is we're finally seeing more doctors on TV and more doctors of all
Mhm.
colors on TV. I mean,
Yeah.
for a long time, there were the doctors who had contracts with network stations, and then myself and a couple others maybe that did a lot of medical television.
Mhm.
Now it's fantastic. We are seeing, brown, Asian,
Mhm.
women,
Mhm.
people of all
Mhm.
specialties, and this is exactly what it should have been all along. But my
Right.
point being is, the experiences that I've had in media and in medicine and just in life, being a Black woman, it just makes the work that I value even that much more important. You know,
Mhm.
we just have to keep going. So no, it's never stopped me. It's, I guess, in some ways, I do expect it. And
Mhm.
then when it happens, you figure out a way around it, which is what we've always done since the beginning of time. Not to sound like a
Right.
Debbie Downer, but
Right.
in many ways, that's my way of overcoming it.
Yeah.
Is you say, okay, this is what happened. So what are we gonna do
Mhm.
now? How
Yeah,
are we
I
gonna get
love
around
that.
this?
It's the interesting thing is, I grew up in Huntsville, Alabama,
Okay.
and so of course, Alabama, down the
Yeah.
street from the KKK, right? Coleman, Alabama, is 30
Wow.
minutes outside of Huntsville, and we know, you know where not to drive through, where not to stop for gas, these things, right?
Wow.
And the truth is, I did not overtly experience as a child that I can remember racism. I at first experienced it when I came to Atlanta to Emory
Interesting.
University at
Interesting.
college.
Interesting.
And so I think that my mother probably shielded me, a lot from that, right? She was
Sure.
a fierce advocate. When I was in school, she was always talking to the teachers. I don't know what went on behind the scenes, but I know that I'm that mom too now with my son, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. You're a mama bear.
I'm a mama bear, right? But I really love what you said, that the being a Black woman in media is what makes the work that you do so much more important, right?
Absolutely.
And I really get that, like the
Mhm.
even having transition from clinical medicine into the coaching realm, and then having transitioned into this realm of teaching hypnosis and teaching neuro-linguistic programming, which has
Wow.
led me into the anti-racism space. I feel
Wow.
like being a Black woman is what makes the work so much more important, because we're
Yes.
modeling something for people who may not see that there's an opportunity for them in this realm, and things
Right.
that would seem like they're outside the box for Black women to do,
Right.
for Black female physicians to do. And
Right.
then our young children can look at the TV and be like, oh yeah, this is what I want to
Mhm.
do someday,
Right.
right? My son
Right.
is learning NLP through, diffusion because I'm talking to him
And
every
by the
day.
way, it was what you do sounds so smart, by the way. I'm over here fangirling. I don't know what all that is, honestly. I admit my ignorance, but it sounds super smart. So I give you all the credit in the world. I'm like, oh my God, she's brilliant. Oh.
Oh, you're so sweet. You are so sweet. Like I just help people remap their mind. That's all. I just
Wait,
get
wait,
rid of.
wait, did you just say that's all? Did you really just say, oh, I just help people remap their mind? That's all. Excuse me? But
Yeah, right,
so
right,
you
right, right,
basically
right.
change people's brains. That's
Right.
all.
That's all. That's all. It's so funny we do that, right? We just, man, I'm just doing some remapping of some minds, and
Right?
I'm
It was just a
training
trip
some
to the
folks, and
moon. I just went
right,
to the moon.
right, exactly.
All I did was go to the moon, girl. That's
All I
it.
did. That is the conversation amongst Black people. All I did was, and people are like, what do you mean all you did was? All you
Right.
did was train a bunch of CEOs and anti-racism? No, that's not all you did.
I mean, but right. I mean, and not that and I don't get the sense that you're minimizing what you do.
Right,
That's not the reason why I
right.
comment, but let's
Yeah.
just call out how fabulous what you do is. And
Thank you.
it's funny how when things become second nature, just remap brains. That's all. I'm like,
Right.
oh,
Well, that's how we are as physicians too. Oh man, I just save lives. That's all I do.
right. Well, that's true.
That's. I think there is a. I think when we become, like the highly trained professionals, like you said, we become second nature. We forget to give ourselves flowers,
Yes,
right?
and credit.
And the truth is, we're so busy a lot of times giving each other flowers. Let's talk about how the community or the society views Black women as not supporting each other. But are you kidding me? I mean,
We
we
do.
are always adjusting each other's crowns and giving each
We
other flowers, and
Yes,
of course there are pockets where there can be pettiness, but in
sure.
all communities.
In all
Man,
communities.
I see in
Yes.
some of these other communities and their little spats between celebrities, and I'm like, well, it's not just us. Everybody can be
Right.
petty. But like
Right.
it's just so funny for me to hear myself say that, because I say that to my clients all the time. And it's like, you know what, we do that because I think we have to
Right.
work so much harder
Mhm.
to be brilliant at, or
Mhm.
not to be brilliant, but to appear to others as
Yeah, to be
brilliant, right?
recognized
To be
as brilliant.
recognized as brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. We have to work. So we become masterful at the things that we do. And it does feel like, oh, I just did that. Like, what are you talking
That's
about? Like,
right.
you asked
That's
me to
right.
fly a plane, then I'm going to be like, whoa, wait, what?
No, but I think that's a really good point, because being Black in America means it's not good enough just to be operating at the top of your craft. You have, that's a given that you have to do that.
Yes.
It's, you actually then have to go above and beyond. And we often talk about this in Black circles and people of color, saying, well, you have to be better than everyone else, that type of thing. You have to be better.
Mhm.
But I think that there is probably a little bit of that mindset that we, especially as physicians, and whether we were physicians or not, operate with is, I don't want to say it's not good enough to be great at what we do, but we understand that in the society that we live in, that is not always enough.
Right.
Right. And that's the construct in which we are living in, is that as a Black woman, I can be the best woman on TV. I could actually be the best for the job. I could have done more segments than anyone, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
That's not actually a guarantee. that I will be the blah, da, 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 da.
Right.
And I know that, but that applies to any disciplines because it's being Black. And again, there's,
Mhm.
is it a shame? Is it sad? Let me be very clear. It's wrong. Okay. Because when
Right.
I haven't said that recently, but let me just throw that in there. It's
Yep.
wrong. And that's what
Mhm.
we call institutionalized and systemic racism, and sort of the
Mhm.
bias that happens against people of color very naturally and
Mhm.
unconsciously for many people and
That's
places.
right.
Right. But once again, for me, it's been important to operate at the level of absolutely facing that and recognizing that, but literally saying, okay, the door is closed. Well, I'm sure there's a window around here. Where's the window? Okay,
That's
let me get
right.
through this window. Right. So that's just what it is. Um, but once again, I guess it brings me back to sort of the positive aspect of what we were just saying, which is that's why what we do, and you too, is so important. That's why
Yeah.
this is important, because the hope is that my nieces who are coming up, your son,
Mhm.
and the next generation, it will not be like this. Just as for our parents' generation,
Mhm.
hopefully our generation is not what they endured. So,
Yeah.
that's the hope, is that progress happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that, by us having to find windows when doors are closed in our face, or when we can't find the door, it makes us some of the most resilient people on the
Girl,
planet.
girl,
People
we
don't
can make
even
anything happen.
anything. We be talking.
Anything.
We have a little joke about, you open the pantry, you open the refrigerator, and there's nothing there, and it's like, oh, what can I make out of some spinach, some pasta, and some ketchup?
Right. And voila,
And
there
it'd
comes a
be
three-course
good.
meal.
It's right.
Hmm.
So we really are resourceful and
Yes. Yes.
resilient. And
Yes.
we have to continue to remember and recognize that resourcefulness and that resilience and that creativity, because
Yes.
whatever is thrown our way, we're going to make it great,
That's
greater
right.
than great.
That's
And I
right.
think that's the beauty of, it is
Yes.
wrong that we've had to experience what we've had to experience, but there's also, there can be no light without the darkness.
True.
And so we tend to find the holes of light poking through the darkness.
Yes.
That's what makes us such amazing people.
And I'm so glad that you talked about that, because, as much as it's important that we talk about racism, you know, I don't want to say there are bright sides to it. No, there are no
Right.
bright sides to racism. However, just as with the pandemic, there's no bright side to COVID, but there have
Hmm.
been bright aspects that have come out of that, right?
Hmm.
And what you just said is really important to remember, that we are you are right, some of the most resourceful and creative people on the planet. When I think about, like, my media experiences, for example, I think a lot of people may think that, oh, she's on TV, blah blah blah. Well, they don't necessarily see that it's been years of building relationships with producers, emailing pitches. For years. It's really only been the last couple of years that I have not really pitched much, because I haven't needed to. But every single day, sending pitches out every single day, being
Hmm.
told no. And usually when producers say no, you just don't hear back. That's just the way. I mean, they're so
Right.
busy. So,
Hmm.
writing someone literally for 6 months, a
Hmm.
year and a half, and they finally say,
Wow.
"Hey, Dr. Jen," you're like, oh, oh, good. But sort of that persistence, that passion, the resilience, the resourcefulness, that has come out of experiences, I think, in some ways, of trying, knowing that we have to sometimes do things more and bigger and better. It's not to say other people don't have to pitch the same way. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it's one of the reasons probably why I haven't gotten tired of it, is because I
Right.
understand that this is sometimes the way it is. So there are a lot of bright things that have come through and come from the struggles we've had as people. I do agree with that.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, I'm so glad that we got to like have this conversation,
Me
and I
too.
think it's important that we empower, our community around, look, this is happening. The system is going to be slow to change, but where can we find our own genius? Where can we find our own light so
Yeah.
that we can make the difference? And I think that if each of us are focusing on influence, that immediate sphere of influence, and if enough people do that, then we will
Yes.
get to that tipping point where this is not as much of a problem, or where as Black people and people of color, we can elevate to the next level
Yes.
of power, of influence, so that
Yes.
we have a more of a say than we have now. Like, we're
Right.
in the top 10%
That's right.
that's running things.
That's right.
So thank you so much for being
Oh.
willing to have the conversation with me, because I know your schedule is busy as well, and you're in demand. So I feel honored.
Oh, well, I am honored, and I'm so glad we actually got a chance to meet. This has been lovely, and I'm sad it's over. I'm like, what? We just, wow, like we just getting started, but
I know it goes so fast.
it
It goes
does. But
so
I've
fast.
so enjoyed this, and I can't thank you enough for the opportunity. So thank you, and I love what you're doing. Fangirling
Thank
over
you.
here, I have to say.
Aw, thank you. Look, same. I do have one more question though.
Sure.
So well, actually two more questions, but this question is, I often wonder, what does Dr. Jen dream of doing like next?
That's a really good, that's a really great question.
Have you thought about it?
I'm not sure that I've actually thought about it. One thing that's changed for me a little bit with the pandemic is I've started creating my own content, which I never did before. I
Mhm.
was doing TV, 200 plus segments every year on television for years. And
Mhm.
in the pandemic, I started creating my own content, and I never thought that my own content. I'll be honest with you, I never thought my own content would be something people would want to watch. I actually,
Mm.
and this is a true story, I felt like my value was being on the Today Show or being on CNN or being on Dr. Oz. I thought that was where my value was.
Mhm.
And I remember I made a couple of videos and I was surprised that people actually watched them.
Mhm.
And honestly, what it taught me was, as I'm always learning, that first of all, just don't underestimate yourself, right? This is for
Right.
all of us. But it
Mhm.
also taught me that my value is not just with the platforms that I go on, that I have a platform as well. And,
That's right.
one might be surprised to hear that it took me 10 years in media to realize that, but
Mhm.
I didn't think so. I thought my value was being on other networks, and I still enjoy it. So I still do that, but I spend a
Mhm.
lot of time now making my own content, which I never actually thought people would want to watch. And
Mhm.
I tell the story just to say, be careful of what you what you decide is not possible. Be
Right.
careful about what you rule out.
Right.
So in terms of what's next, I've really fallen in love with creating my own content. It's something I plan to continue doing. I still go on TV. I'll be back at the Dr. Oz show this week and still doing other segments, and I love it.
Yay.
But it's been something that has been a really exciting journey for me to grow my platform and develop my own content. So I plan to keep doing that. We'll see what happens in the future. I always dream about having my own show, girl. That's going to be a dream. Even when I'm 75, we walk around with my walker saying, "Well, I always wanted to have my own show." But
Well, you know what? You'll be saying that from the stage of your own show.
well, I've
Yes.
never said that on TV, like I've never said that publicly, but I'm saying it here because why not? But so we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. You never know. Maybe in 2 or 3 years, I'll take a total 360. You
You
never
never
know. So
know.
we'll
You
see.
never know. If you had asked me 10 years ago if I would be teaching, having a whole school teaching neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis, I'd be like, what? What? First of all, what
That's
is that?
amazing. I'm still like, what is that? But I know it's brilliant and it's amazing. And you change brains. That's what I
Change
know.
brains, right? So I can totally see it. I always ask that question because I do. I mean, like I can totally see you having your own show, and
Great.
so I'm looking forward to that time where we're looking back and saying, remember that time you were on my podcast and you said I
Yes.
dream of, and I'll be like, girl, see, you did that, you did that.
Okay, so let's make a pact right now if we can.
Yes. All
If
right.
I if I ever get my own show, I say we meet up and we're not doing coffee, we're doing good stuff. We're doing
Yes.
champagne, we're doing drinks, okay?
Yes.
And we will celebrate and we will also celebrate. And let me ask you, I know that you were asking me the questions, but what do you see next? I'm very curious. What is can I ask that? Or,
Absolutely. I love that you asked that.
yeah.
I think for me, what's in my future is continuing to grow the school and to train trainers.
Ah,
Right. So I'm growing the school to train trainers. I really want to train our community in this technology of remapping minds so they can remap their own minds and to continue to grow the anti-racism movement. I never
yes.
saw myself as an activist. So to be able to,
Mm,
train executives from the top down and staff from the top up, to really continue to forward that activism movement. That is right now where my passion is, where my heart is.
yes.
And,
Yes.
I think eventually one of the things that I recently thought of was starting a school to train kids in this technology of neurolinguistic programming,
I
because I
think it's
think the
amazing.
young mind is
That's right.
the most powerful mind, and we don't
No,
even
you're
realize
right.
it.
I, I have a request. Can you write
Sure.
a book? And this is actually a very serious request.
Yes.
I mean, have you thought about writing a book? The reason why I say this is because as you talk about, having schools and training trainers, the first thought I have is, well, I'm not near you. I want it. I'm like, I want some. I don't know if you offer Zoom courses or online trainings or even have considered writing a book, but what you're talking about sounds like something that we all need and can use. And my first thought is, well, how do I get some and I'm not in your area? Anyway, just food for thought because
Yes.
I need some remapping, I think.
Well, you know what? I do like, all my stuff is virtual, my trainings are virtual, my work is virtual. And you know what? You done put the bug in my ear. I need to start thinking about, okay, what, I feel
Yes,
like the book is going to be, I think there's two versions of the book, like Chicken Soup for the Soul and then Chicken Soup for the Kid Soul. So I feel like there's going to
sure.
be a book for the grown-ups, but I think there's going to also be a book for, like how children remap their minds or how they prepare their
Absolutely.
minds to be able to create the future that they want. So I
I
love it.
mean, it's so needed right now in this
Mhm,
we're living through literally tragedy, the greatest
yeah,
tragedy of our generation, and
mhm,
people, we need resources and to literally have not only your Zoom courses, but to have like a physical roadmap that we can say, okay, did that one, that's just, I'm a tactile person that way. But I mean, I think the work you're doing is amazing. And girl, when you let me know when the book is published, because I'm going to buy copies and I'm going to blast it out on social because it's such
oh.
a needed thing. So,
Well, look, let me get to work because I definitely already you when you put the bug, I was like, oh, that's not but a thing. I already have a title
yes.
for
Or
it.
even like maybe it doesn't end in a book, but a pamphlet is something that a tangible thing, resources that people can have on their phone or whatever,
Mhm.
and sell it. Yes,
Yes,
that is value. That is
yes,
valuable. So anyway,
yes.
sorry, you didn't ask me what I thought,
I
but
love it. No, you know what? This is the good stuff. This is why these conversations need to happen because here we are adjusting
yeah.
each other's crowns and
Yeah.
empowering, lift each other up. So I love it. Dr. Jen, I want you to tell the listeners, because I don't want to forget to say this, right? I want you to tell the listeners who may not have already heard of you, because see, I'm a fan and you got influence across
Oh,
the world. But
oh,
how do they follow you? How do they get your unique content and follow you and what you're going and what you're doing and
sure.
the shows that you're going to be on?
Sure. Well, I appreciate you allowing me to say that. So, I'm pretty much everywhere at Dr. Jen Caudle. That's DrJenCaudle. So on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. That's the same handle. And then my website is drjencaudle.com. And on the website, if anyone wants to visit, I do offer a free health newsletter that I send out once a week. Comes to your email box. You can sign up for that and other stuff. So yeah, I do welcome people keeping in touch and send me a note. I always love that.
And Dr. Jen has paraphernalia, y'all. I don't have my t-shirt
Oh,
yet
that's
because I gotta
true.
go to the UPS store. I know it's here.
Okay, good.
So,
Good, good,
but
good.
I have to go. My box is like down in the city. So I'm
I
going to go get it today. I'll have to snap a picture. But yeah, Dr.
please
Jen has
do.
paraphernalia. She's got mugs, she's got t-shirts. So,
Yes,
go check them out. They're cute. She's got the pink ones for the girly girl pink people.
that's right. That's right. I do. And thank you for your support with them. I do appreciate that.
Of course, always. Well, thank you so much again for being on. And I can't wait until we are celebrating with champagne somewhere
Yes.
exotic because you have your
And
show.
because you've written your books or expanded,
Yes,
now we'll have two things to
we
celebrate.
have two things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right.
Okay.
Well, you
All
all,
right.
you heard it here, Dr. Jen Caudle. You go and check her out, any platform at Dr. Jen Caudle, right?
Yes.
and
Yes.
and then her website, Dr. Jen Caudle. So that's that branding, you all.
Yep. Yeah.
And we always love our listeners. Thank you to the listeners. Without the listeners, there is no podcast. And if you love this podcast, please leave a little comment. Please leave a little review so the people listening behind you know that this can make a difference in their lives. So you all stay safe out there. Have a great rest of the day. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you on the next one. Namaste.